Hi there. Welcome to everybody. My name's Mikhail. This is my good friend George Michaelopoulos, and you have arrived, if that was your intention, at Hegemonix. And this evening, we're going to talk about something that kind of makes my heart a little uh, heavy um, in some ways and gets my back up in another way. George brought to my attention, I guess, earlier in the month. Um, I think it was done by the archons of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, or one of the archons of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, and it copied it off of uh, the. It was a website from down in Sydney, Australia. The Greek
Yeah.
Church has a big presence down in Australia, evidently. And I'll go ahead and put it up on the screen here. But
Yeah.
it was it's basically an attempt to laud the the Patriarchate of Constantinople and to show that it and four others were um, or three others it and three others were um, founded by apostles and Rome, obviously, um, and that everybody else came from grants of autocephaly from Constantinople, except for the Church of Russia, which it says on this little piece of work, uh, says that was Stalin that granted um, Moscow or Russia autocephaly in 1943. And I
Hmm.
looked into it a little bit before we get to the rest of it, because there's stuff at the bottom about the three wonderful things that coalesced in the Patriarchate of Constantinople, which make it a papacy, basically. The first without equals.
Yeah.
But I looked into what he was talking about, or what they were talking about with Stalin, and there was something that happened with Stalin uh, in 1943, and it affected several churches. It affected the Church of Georgia as well,
Hmm.
where I think their patriarchate was restored from, uh, or maybe it's Bulgaria. No, it was Georgia
Georgia. Uh-huh.
was restored, um, and then the government had decided not to recognize the restoration of the patriarchate by the Russian Orthodox Church, and then they officially recognized it again uh, in 1943 as well. So that's, I think, what he's talking about. But that doesn't necessarily doesn't have anything to do with autocephaly. I mean,
No.
the Russian church was autocephalous all through that period from Peter the Great all the way up to that, World War II.
Ac
Um,
Actually,
out
from
without,
Tsar Boris Godunov, he uh, uh, he finally got autocephaly for the Church of Russia. Uh, Now
yeah,
he had a unfortunate tenure as Tsar, but still, and it lasted until well, the Patriarchate was undone by Peter the First or Peter the Great, but the Church of Russia still had its autocephaly. It was just governed by a Holy Synod, and
right,
um, and then it was reestablished in 1918
right,
under the provisional government of Alexander Kerensky, and they had a 1917, excuse me, and they had a close to an ecumenical council. It was a broad synod of bishops that came to Russia to reestablish the Patriarchate, and but it had never lost its autocephaly. and
Yeah,
Tikhon became
exactly.
Ti- Tikhon became was elected patriarch, and he died in
Yes.
1925, and Sergius took over, not necessarily as patriarch, but as locum tenens, and I don't know, he may have been
Right.
patriarch or something, but
Didn't
it
allow
was
another patriarch to be appointed. They tried to do a Peter, a Peter the Great
mhm,
on them.
mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
And
obviously, you know, and these other churches like Bulgaria and Serbia, they were reestablished as autocephalous, but they had been autocephalous for almost a millennium. You know, uh,
yeah,
the
yeah,
you know, in
yeah,
fact, I I don't
yeah,
mean to run on, but I do want the historical record shows that the first autocephalous church granted was Cyprus, and then the second one by an ecumenical council was Bulgaria. Bulgaria was granted autocephaly by an ecumenical council, and Georgia was granted autocephaly by the patriarch of Antioch. He just did
yes,
it
in the fifth.
unilaterally. Nobody
Yeah,
said two words about it. Now, fast
yeah,
forward couple of years, a couple of hundred centuries, and you know, Serbia unilaterally granted autocephaly to is it Montenegro or Macedonia or one of
Mass,
those? And again,
North Mass.
you know, this
Yeah.
mythology that only the Patriarch of Constantinople can grant autocephaly or an ecumenical council is just not true. Anyway, I just want to
Right.
lay that out there as a backdrop so that anybody who's listening to this will say, well, what about 1943? What about Stalin? You know, whatever nonsense. You know,
Well, the thing that they put together, whoever it was, like I'm going to attribute to the archons, is put together in such a way that it originates all autocephaly, except for the very earliest churches, the ones that was that was founded by Saint Andrew or Saint Mark or
right?
whomever. Everything else goes to Constantinople. Well, that's not
Yeah.
true, as we just been saying.
Yeah.
Antioch was where they grant Georgia autocephaly.
Hmm.
Um, Bulgaria had a patriarchate a long time ago, and
Oh yeah.
uh, it was stolen from it. There's a lot of intrigue dealing with Bulgarian patriarchate. I don't think we
Hmm.
need to get deep into it,
Yeah.
but there's it's a whole messy thing that you get into when you talk about these establishments of autocephaly, because just for example, with Russia, um, it got its autocephaly. I mean, it was originally getting its bishops from Constantinople,
Yes.
and
And also
Constantinople
some from Bulgaria. Some of the metropolitans of Kiev came from Bulgaria too. So
yeah,
I'm just putting that out there. But yeah.
that I didn't catch the last thing you said though. What was it? What was the last thing you said? I didn't catch it.
Oh, they got some of their
Yeah.
metropolitans of Kiev from Bulgaria.
Oh, okay,
And,
okay.
and then there was a time in which they would alternate between Constantinople and native Russian bishops. And you know, and the different grand dukes, because Russia was not a polity as much as it was a civilization. You got Novgorod, Vladimir
Hmm.
Suzdal, Kiev, then
Hmm.
Moscow was the latecomer. Uh, they were they didn't mind having a Byzantine, whether he was Greek or not, as Metropolitan of Kiev because he was kind of like, you know, neutral. So it
Yeah,
wasn't that big of a deal. And you know, the Church of Constantinople at that time was a serious enterprise too. You know,
yeah.
it just was.
Enterprise is the apple there. You're
Yeah,
talking about big business at the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Uh, the the Russians weren't able to get uh, the to get Constantinople to appoint another metropolitan uh, for, I think it was Kiev,
Yeah.
in 441, I think,
Yeah. Isidore of
because
Kiev was a Greek who went to the Council of Florence, signed the document saying
yeah,
we're in communion with Rome. He came to Moscow marching behind a Latin cross and
it's
carrying
no,
a Roman crozier. And
yeah,
the folk tale is that the dogs even didn't bark. They just were shocked. He
yeah,
was put in prison.
yes,
Somehow
yes,
he escaped, and then he left. He received a cardinal's red hat. So
yeah. Well, in any case, is actually how Russia got its autocephaly in an
yeah,
ignominious
yeah,
situation where the mother church lapsed into heresy, and there you are. You're
there you are.
Orthodox, but you don't know the church, at the time. Then that was the first instance. It had nothing to do with Stalin. Then the second instance was in 1589, where the Patriarch of Constantinople granted uh, uh, not only autocephaly, but the patriarchate, the title of
Yeah,
patriarchy,
he did.
patriarch, to the Bishop of Moscow, and said and mentioned by way of passing at least that
Hmm.
not just Moscow, but the whole country was the third Rome
Right,
in
right.
in the uh, in the tome. And then that's the second one, which also didn't have anything to do with Stalin.
Yeah,
Then in 1593, there was a pan Orthodox uh, council called. I'm not sure who all was there, but heads of several Orthodox uh, churches were there. And they did the same thing. They ratified the autocephaly and the patriarchal nature of the Russian church. So uh, I don't know. I mean, I know there's a lot of hatred in certain quarters of the Fennar for their Slavic brethren, uh, but uh, that's
if if
just
if
silly.
if
That's just
I
finding
if
something
I may
to,
interject here and give you a
yeah,
little bit more nuance, because being Greek myself, um, it's not so much hatred as it is envy. I mean,
and
it really is envy and fear. It's not Christ-like at all. And
mm,
the archons, and I've known a few archons who I thought were very good, godly men, right? Two specifically that reposed in the Lord.
mhm,
But the archons as a enterprise, there's that word again, big Archon Inc. They're very worldly men. They don't really know
yeah,
church history at all. Uh, as far as the ascetic struggle, I'm not going to judge, but you could tell by looking at them, they're just businessmen, and they've made it big in whatever field they are, and they just don't understand church history, church tradition,
yeah,
and and their leaders, their spiritual leaders, are very questionable men like Father Alexander Karlitzos. And as far as the Fanar itself, its main brain trust is made up of Deacon John Chrysotheges, who is uber liberal.
mhm,
And then, of course, that part of that brain trust, it's an informal brain trust, is the Fortamites, our friends, the Fortamites, Papa
yeah,
Nicolau in, oh gosh, what's his name? I can't remember his name. Papa Nicolau and somebody else, and they're at Fordham University. they occupy a chair of Byzantine studies at that wonderful Jesuit institution of learning, and
Mm,
we'll just leave you to fill in the blanks on what the Jesuits are or what they have devolved into, and you know, so I mean, if the Greeks
yeah,
were really serious, if the Greeks were really serious, they'd create a university on par with um, Fordham, or they would sink a whole lot more money into Holy Cross and make it a uh, a, a Class A institution of higher learning. Okay,
yeah,
but they don't want to do that. Okay,
yeah.
and then they'd have the Fordhamites there, and but they don't want to do that. They don't have the means to do that, and even if they have the means to do it, and they're it's just a waste of time. Why not just have the Catholics pay for it over at Fordham? You know? So this just goes to show you how unserious these people really are. And they think that they can pull the
Well,
wool over everybody's eyes.
yeah. Um, well, some of it's, is just fate or destiny, historical accident. Um, you can say, I mean, that's just where they ended up in a sense because um, the relationship between the Greek Orthodox Church, especially the Patriarchate of Constantinople, and the United States government, the State Department,
Hmm.
and the presidents, and all that, that really got strengthened throughout the Cold War,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
uh, and got to the point where it's almost the spiritual arm of the deep state,
Sure.
or a spiritual arm of the deep state. I don't want to say
Hmm.
the spiritual arm,
Hmm.
but when something grows like that, um, unless somebody got to it much earlier and gave it an alternative, I mean, everybody's trapped in this groupthink. Um, and you can either leave it, go to another church, you can go to the OCA, you can go to Rocor, you can go to wherever
Hmm.
else. But if you're in that, you're going to sing that tune because that's the only show in town, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, and
Yeah.
it's like everybody's locked in at that point, which
Yeah.
you see a certain historical tragedy involved in that because most people like you and I can look at a map and can look at the winds blowing and can see that the winds are blowing in favor of the kind of Eurasian alliance that
Hmm.
uh, Russia and China and whoever tags along within.
Hmm.
And it's not blowing so much in the direction of the United States and especially Europe. Europe is just turning into a basket case and backwater.
Yeah.
Uh, and so you would not want to be on the business end of any hostility involving Russia, I would not think. Um, Not trying to antagonize the Russians by doing this, that, or the other. If you could help it, not to say that you wouldn't. I mean, you could be jealous, you could be envious, you could downplay, the Russian whatever Russia's contributions had been to Orthodox culture. You could do all that stuff, but the thing that really gets in my mind that I think is just a serious, serious mistake is um, going out of their way. What
Yeah.
I saw on that thing was 1943 Stalin.
Hmm.
I mean, if you
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
to set somebody off, that's the best way to set somebody off. That
Well, yeah. I mean that's a diplomatic gaffe. Okay. I mean,
yeah,
pe- people who are professional diplomats or even intel agents like John Kiriakou, you know, they know
Yeah.
how not to say stupid things, or they know, especially they know not to say inflammatory things. Okay,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
this is what gives me cautious pessimism about the archons. They're just they're not ready for prime time, and
No,
they make
I
fools of
assume that
themselves. So take
I
that for what
assume
it's
that
worth.
they knew exactly what they were doing when they said 1943 stall, and that was the point of my titling this little program Turkish Simony. I know exactly
Mm,
what that means
yeah,
to an
yeah,
archon,
yeah.
and and I don't mean to be unfair to anybody. I mean, there's nothing fair about the Stalin thing, so uh, I don't mean to be unfair with the Turkish Simony thing, but he is a Turkish citizen, and Kyriako initially said that he was bribed to do this, and then it took long enough for him to recant that you assume that he was made an offer he couldn't refuse.
Hmm.
So that's probably what happened.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I don't know. I mean, we're just I can't, there was a time when I thought I might be able to go back to Greek church, and after all the dust had settled, uh, and the excommunication was lifted and everything,
Right.
because we're not even laity. We're not allowed to take communion at uh, Greek churches anymore. Um, but once that was lifted, I might be able to go back if it was more convenient or something like that. But I love the people. That's the sad thing
Yeah,
about
that's
it.
that it
Uh,
is. I love the people
all
too.
these
I'm
people
Greek.
are
I
not.
love them.
They're not like the people that are at the very top. Even the middle people, like Metropolitan Nicholas, uh, who was over the parish here, local parish, Panagea, in Lexington.
A Brokar.
He's a fine man. I don't have a word to say against him. He was a good example of a bishop, a pious bishop. Um, but once you get right up there and into the highly politicized, there's something in the atmosphere up there that really,
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I'll talk now about this thing that happened 2 days ago on June 19th, i.e., Juneteenth, in
oh
which
yeah, yeah,
a to show how woke um, Archbishop Elpidophoros is and his brain trust and the people surrounding him in New York City. They had a prayer
yeah,
service, an ecumenical prayer service, with something called the Antiochian Orthodox Christian Church of America. And when
hmm
this came over on the UOJ website, I said, "What?" And I'd never heard of that. I
uh,
thought,
I thought
does
it
he mean
was
the
normal.
Antiochians? and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and and the man who they were lionizing was a man named Archbishop Titus. I believe it was Titus. And I looked at him. I said, I don't know of any Lebanese or convert bishop named Titus in Antioch. And I
yeah.
looked closer, and look, he's African American. And so I just get on the internet. So what the hell's going on here? And I'm sure he's a very fine man, and I'm sure his jurisdiction is made up of fine people, but it is a Vagante jurisdiction. It's not canonical.
Okay.
So there's a
And
whole bunch of canons there that Elpidophoros broke by praying and having a service with this Vagante bishop. And of course he only did it because he wanted to show that that the Greek Americans are not racist, and he had to search far and wide for some African American quasi Orthodox bishop. Now we could spend an hour talking about that. I'd I'd rather not, except for the fact that it is. I'm wondering how the real Antiochians feel about this. Excuse me, and uh, how this is going to affect the Assembly of Canonical Bishops of America.
Mm.
I'm just wondering. Uh, my
Yeah.
take is that these, until Elpidophoros and his ilk and the people who surround him are removed one way or the other, that we're never going to have a united American Orthodox Church. Well, we will have one, but it will not have anybody from the GOA in it, except for anybody in the GOA, any layman who wants to join. So I just want to get that in there and make of that what you will.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's a word that comes up a lot in our dealings with liberals, uh, but also with the GOA, hubris.
Well,
There's a, at the bottom of that tract that they put out with all the stuff about autocephaly, it once again tries to reinforce this notion that there's something magical about uh, the ecumenical. Well, I try to avoid the term ecumenical patriarchy. I
right.
personally do.
Me too.
Uh, but there's something that something magical about the Patriarch of Constantinople being three things: the bishop of uh, the city of Constantinople, which is Istanbul, the
Which no longer
archbishop.
exists.
Yeah, yeah, the archbishop of, or no, the archbishop of the city, the
Yeah.
patriarch of that whole area, you know.
Uh-huh.
And then third is basically what he lays claim to as being the ecumenical patriarchate. And that's where those three things are somehow in the minds of these people who, as Metropolitan Elpidophoros, who came up with it first, that I heard of,
Yeah.
that
Famous
somehow make
Sina
that
Peribus,
triple
first
crown.
without
Yeah.
equals. Yeah.
Kind of make it the triple
Yeah.
crown.
Yeah.
He's a bishop, he's a patriarch, and he's universal
Yeah.
Candyman. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And so we're fine with those first two things up to a point, but all this, nobody. The stuff that they added during the 20th century is the problem for the most part, because it was like early in the 20th century when they started talking about Canon 28 and
Yeah.
um, universal jurisdiction and all that stuff.
Well,
I mean, there were problems.
yeah, we talk about Harry Truman and the Cold War and how being a 33rd degree Mason, he really liked Archbishop Athenagoras Spirou, who was the Archbishop Primate of the Greek Archdiocese, who himself was a Mason. And I'll give him props. He was a very proud American citizen. He loved America, and he uh, he he volunteered to serve in the American military. Okay, that that's how pro-American he was. But he was a Mason, and Truman made him demanded that the Turks make him Patriarch of Constantinople, and they did. They didn't want to, but they did. And he did
Mm,
that because Truman instigated the Cold War, and he needed a spiritual arm. And as you mentioned earlier, now having said that, that's 1948. Go back all the way
Mhm.
to 1914, and I
Mhm.
think it was 1914, and Archbishop Meletius Metaxakis, also a Mason, uh, an agent of the British, attended the Lambeth Conference in 1930, which was when the Anglican Church kind of went downhill.
Mhm.
The British made him a patriarch of Constantinople. He had been Archbishop of Athens, but he was removed.
Yeah.
He came
20s.
to
Yeah. Yeah.
America, tried to set up a Greek archdiocese here in America,
Yeah.
even though he was not allowed to do that. He then the British moved him over to Constantinople, and he just was a modernist. He was a modernist in Greece, and
Yeah.
he in 1922 or 23 he was removed during
Mhm.
the catastrophe or the catastrophe in which there was the exchange of populations between Greece and Turkey, and he was
Mhm.
removed. And as a consolation prize, the British put him in Alexandria as Patriarch of Alexandria. So he was a trifecta. Uh,
Yeah.
he was the only he he was head of the Autocephalous Church of Greece, the head of the Autocephalous Church of Constantinople, and then the head of the Autocephalous Church of Alexandria. Um, it it was a it, all there was nothing to write home to mother about, and of course he did institute the new calendar, which caused a
Yeah.
schism among the Greek people.
Yeah.
And so anyway,
And when you
so
say
we
schism among we should
oh
not
yeah,
underestimate severity of what you're talking about.
oh yeah,
Lots of
yeah,
violence, severe violence
yeah,
over there.
yeah. The Greeks were not happy, and they're not happy now with all the modernism of Bartholomew and everything he's done. You know,
Yeah.
being liturgizing with the Pope or concelebrating with the Pope. That's not the right word, but you know what I mean. Is the least of his sins. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
the way if you want to explore that, you can. I think everybody knows what we're talking about.
Well, for liturgizing with what now?
Well, with Leo the 14th.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't really
No.
liturgize. He had a ceremonial prayer, and during the
Yeah.
litany, his name was mentioned first as Bishop of Rome,
Yeah.
which is correct. If we were in communion
It's not
with
convenient.
Rome, he
Yeah.
would be the first. Okay,
Right. Yeah.
but we're not in communion, so
Right. So at some point, uh, for whatever reason, whether it was money changed hands or
oh yeah,
Hillary Clinton just gave him a look or something like that, said, you don't want to, is your health okay? Do you think that you might want to leave this world or something?
hmm
Who knows why he did what he did? But back in 2018, he decided that he would grant autocephaly to the Church of Ukraine. Is that on
right.
your side that you're tweeting?
Oh,
Those
there's
must have
birds out
bird.
here.
Oh
There's
yeah.
birds out
Okay.
here. I'm outside.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's all right.
That's okay.
Um. Now it's not coincidental, of course, that uh, the State Department did a coup d'état in Ukraine in 2014, and they were trying to basically switch the country, turn it into a neo-Nazi, anti-Russian bastion to use against Russia. And so you want it to have its own church, not one that's, you know, anchored in Moscow. And so that's basically the impetus behind this whole thing with creating the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. I think he thought it was kind of cute to name it the OCU because the Russians had named uh, the American Orthodox Church that they granted autocephaly to the Orthodox Church in America.
Right.
Um, the only problem is that the Orthodox Church in America, everybody acknowledged that everybody involved was canonical, and it wasn't people who had been schismatic for long periods of time.
Well,
And it wasn't somebody
and
else's
none of the bishops or
territory.
priests were, and none of the bishops or priests were charlatans either. You know,
Right, right.
and I mean that. I mean, Epiphany Domenko, he's not legally or validly ordained, and the other two schismatic sects in Ukraine, one Makary, Archbishop Makary something or other, uh,
Hmm.
again self-ordained, you know. But Bartholomew
Yeah,
thought with his magic pen, he could validate their uncanonical self-ordinations. Well, you
yeah,
see how that's working out, and even in the Ukraine now, the vast majority of people still attend churches that are under under Metropolitan Onufry.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think they thought that this new organization was going to be the, the the people in the Fana Bartholomew thought this was going to be their creature, and what they learned was you got a bunch of people who are cutthroats in their own homes, and all they're
Mhm.
doing is using it to get their whatever they want to happen. And so Philaret wanted to be patriarch, and as soon as it
Yeah,
became clear he wasn't going to be patriarch, he pulled his people out.
yeah.
And,
And in
so
fact, in fact, if I may say something about Philaret, who was a very questionable man.
yeah,
Okay,
yes, they all
he
you want.
as
Nothing had been said before.
as as he, as he was dying, he said he wanted nobody from the OCU, the false church,
Yeah,
serving at his funeral.
yeah, because they hadn't been ordained. There's no,
Well, yeah,
at least
and
he's been ordained at some point.
he had been ordained exactly.
Before his wives and marriages and whatever he's uh
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, if ever the whole story is told and laid out, you just have to hang your head and say, God,
yeah.
and I'm
Lord have
sure the
mercy.
other,
I mean,
yeah, and it's not just a Ukraine thing or a Slavic thing. I mean, everybody. I know that, like for example, the Arabs, they have their own little,
yeah,
you know, things that happen, events that everybody just wishes that never, they just don't
yeah.
want to talk about.
But
Everybody just
yeah,
changes subject.
yeah, exactly, yeah, exactly. But Philaret was an ordained priest, a consecrated bishop. Uh, he was, I think, metropolitan of Kiev. Leaving aside his personal moral failings, he was all that. He was also defrocked. Okay,
Yeah,
and he went to Bartholomew and asked to have that case relooked at. Bartholomew, to his credit, said, "No, I'm not going to do that. I
right.
mean, you know, you're a Russian. You go to the Russians. You work it out among them." And
That's what that's what
he,
he told the other church too. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, exactly. So,
yeah,
interestingly enough, the Metropolia, which is what the OCA was informally called for decades, in the
hmm,
late '60s, they went to Patriarch Athenagoras and said, "Look, can you take us in? Can you give us autocephaly? We can't be under
Mhm.
Moscow. I mean, this is the evil empire." And Athenagoras told them, "You are Russians. Go to the Russian church and let them figure it out." Well, we
Mhm.
did. And
Mhm.
we took his advice, but he was very he he didn't expect that the Russian patriarch would grant I think it was Pimin at the time would grant autocephaly to the metropolia in America. He didn't expect that. Well, and he took it pretty bad, but
Yeah.
they did what he told them to do. Okay, and again, the bishops were valid bishops. So
Yeah. So they decided to hatch this plan and get this thing together, and nobody seems to you've got a lot of people on the outside of this looking in who are saying things like, "Oh, those nice Ukrainians, they've been under uh, the Soviet boot for so long. They deserve their own church and yada yada yada." And they make those nice little eggs, and they have the colorful clothing.
hmm
And anytime that they got people taking up for them, so they must be right. And
yeah,
they just want their independence,
yeah.
and people who are on the outside of this don't really understand what it means to lose Texas.
Right.
That's what
Yeah.
you're talking about. You know, what it means to lose Texas, what it means to lose Virginia. You know?
Well,
That's
and let's not forget, we here in the West, a lot of us still think that the Soviet Union still exists, and
yeah,
we still think that America is a force for good. And yet, one of the hallmarks of American aid anywhere is you got to be on board with the Skittles agenda.
yeah,
Okay, and you know what I mean by
yeah.
Skittles, right? And
I
and
know.
and 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 the Russians say no. The Georgians are saying have said no. Okay,
Yeah,
even the Holy Synod of Greece voted to a man 77 to nothing to not go along with the Skittles agenda, gay marriage, and all that nonsense. Now the Greek government
yeah,
went along with it, but again, that, that's a story of another day. The Church of Greece did
mhm,
not. Okay, and just recently, the Patriarch of Bulgaria, the Patriarch of Romania, said the same thing. And Bartholomew has boxed himself into a corner because I'm not going to say he's on board with the Skittles agenda. It's just he's indifferent to it. I'll be very charitable here, okay? And I I could go into detail about why that is so, but I'm not going to. And
yeah,
so and Elpidophoros, who is a jovial man, and growing up in Istanbul, he really loved America. He thought America was like the shining city on the hill. It was a force for good. Our soft power, the Beach Boys and rock and roll and all that was good.
mm,
Uh, and he, unlike you or I, who've lived here for half a century at least, and have seen America degenerate into this moral abyss. It's not you don't know what you're talking about. You really don't. So
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and being on the East Coast, he's definitely not going to get it. But anyway,
yeah,
uh, so uh, again, I just want to end with this that Bartholomew, for whatever reason, became a tool of the State Department, and um, in all of its manifestations. And even though Trump has been president now twice, he's trying to win the culture back. I mean, there's no trainees in the military anymore. Uh,
yeah,
he's he's not recognizing so-called Pride Month. Um, but we may be too far gone. I don't know. the The point is, Bartholomew decided to go along with whatever the State Department told him to do.
Yeah. I mean, I feel bad for him in a sense. I mean, I shouldn't, but I don't think they can see any alternatives. I mean, I think they think that they're, totally invested, and they can't even imagine any way that they could turn around and
Uh-huh.
do something else. They've read from the same script for so long and make the same
Mhm.
compromises and told the same lies for so long that it would be totally out of character to do anything else, and somebody else would
Yeah.
rise up and throw them out. So
What
it's
what
just a
uh,
question
what
of
what
forces
gives
right
me
now.
hope? What gives me hope is this. As far as the Patriarchate of Constantinople is concerned, the Phanar, let's just say the Phanar,
Hmm.
the men who are waiting in the wings are not really stalwart men. Okay. Um, I I do hear that there's this dark horse who is a is a stand up guy, and he may be the next patriarch. I'm not going to give you his name because it'd be the kiss of death. Or it could be. Um, the the but the top front runners are not. They're compromised men as well. However,
Yeah.
and this is the point I want to make. None of them have the stature that Bartholomew had in the first 10, 15 years of his archpastorate. He, he, if you're the Patriarch of Constantinople, you've got a bad hand to play. But he played it pretty darn well. He was the Green Patriarch. He was um, the guy who
Yeah.
talked about you know in the environmental crisis. He had some cachet with the globalist elite all over the world, especially in America, and especially when
Hmm.
Obama was president and when Biden was president. And
Hmm.
and people could look to him and say, well, now wait, the Patriarch of Constantinople says this. Um, there's nobody waiting in the wings that has his stature. And
Hmm.
therefore, I and and it's now obvious, especially after 2019 and the Ukraine war, that he's really lost a lot of his cachet. Okay, if he'd passed on 10 years ago, he'd probably be remembered as you know a transitional figure or something like that. But he stayed too long, and he's seeing the Greeks have a word called apotelesmata, the uh, the uh, the repercussions of of
Hmm.
of his tenure. None of it has been good. I I
Hmm.
I will give him props for setting up the regional Episcopal assemblies. Okay, I'll give him props for that.
Yeah. It's a
Now
step.
I
It's a step
realize,
forward.
yeah, it's a step forward. Now I realize it's a way to grab a hold of the opposition and try to mold it to your satisfaction. But at least it's you can't argue with it. Like for instance, the the Bulgarians back in 1878 or whatever in Constantinople, they wanted their own bishop. So what did the patriarch? I think it was Joachim II or Joachim III convened a council, and they condemned ethnophilitism. In other words, they condemned racism, for want of a better word, or ethnic tribalism. Now, they did it for the wrong reasons, okay, to solidify Greek control over the Bulgarian parishes. But the outcome philosophically was correct. Okay, it's like what Moses did when when the
I
children of
wouldn't
Israel
go
were
to
dying of thirst.
yeah.
God said, take your staff and punch this rock, and water came out, and it did. But Moses took credit for it. Now, did God immediately dry it up so that the people would die? No. Moses
Mm,
did something. He did what God told him to do, but he didn't do it all the way. God said, "Do it because I love my people," and stuff like that. Not aggrandize yourself. So, so
mm.
I think it was 1872, the Council of Constantinople, which condemned ethnophilitism. That's correct, but they did it for the wrong reasons. Okay, their intent was not pure. So
Yeah,
that's
and
all I got
I
to say
think
about
they
that.
used the wrong word. They shouldn't have said heresy. Uh, that's too broad.
Well, yeah,
uh, if you took that literally, we're all out of the church because
yeah.
all these all these uh, ethnic non geographical jurisdictions that
Oh, sure.
all
Yeah.
yeah
I'm,
yeah
I'm,
that's
I mean, you go to any Greek archdiocese, Jew parish, and say, well, the next bishop is probably going to be a Hispanic or a Serb. No, 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 no. We have
yeah
to have our Greek festival. I mean, they're
yeah
violating what they're engaging in heresy, and you could go on down the
yeah. I
line:
think
the
heresy is
Bulgars, the
strong
Serbs,
word, but it was
all.
only a local council too.
Yeah.
It was only a
So
local
I mean,
council too. So, you know,
yeah,
but yeah. So I think we pretty much run it as far as we can run it. I mean,
yeah,
it's just a flyer, really. I don't think it's gonna get that much circulation beyond, Go Arch for the most part.
no,
Uh, for the most part, it's from my experience with Russian parishes, they don't even know what's going on in Greek parishes. I think the what I've experienced with the different jurisdiction is they live like they have some idea of what's happening in the other jurisdictions,
hmm
but it's not really a day-to-day part of their lives that they just don't,
no.
you know.
Mm.
So anyway, so if you have heard or seen anything here that just fluffs your tail, then you can hit subscribe, hit like, and we'll see you again next time on Hegemonix.
Peace out.